guys. Welcome back to the 626 podcast.
Welcome back.
This week, we wanted to talk about, because I think if you guys heard our previous podcast, we had talked about goal setting and kind of went really deep into that.
Sustainability.
Sustainability, that's the big word for the year. But I think this one kind of came from a lot of like the comments and stuff and like people saying like, hey, okay, that's great. How do I set those goals if I'm drowning? That was kind of the comment. Like, okay, like I'm not on the island as much as I'm like on the beach.
I'm doggy paddling and dredging water.
Like, how do I do that? And we've been there as we're well experienced to it. How do you like accomplish anything in life? How do you remotely get forward if you are drowning or you're taking on water or whatever analogy you want to go to? A lot of nautical analogies. So Tori, as an expert, go ahead and explain to us what you're supposed to do.
I'll excuse myself.
I
don't know. That's a hard one when it comes to like trying to get, like for me specifically, editing is what would be more of the drowning factor because that is my job. And like having a bunch of weddings and having a bunch of, it's when you don't have the drive and you're burnt out because you've been burnt at both ends, it's really difficult to like get the gusto to do it. Because the way that my personality is like, if I'm overwhelmed by something, I don't touch it, which makes it worse because then it doesn't get done and it just gets kicked down further. And then it becomes more overwhelming and then I don't want to deal with it anymore. But then it's like, when you finally buck up and do it, it's like 2 seconds.
I think that's a human trait in general. Like, hey, we'd rather avoid the thing that's confusing or overstimulating.
Yes.
And we'd seek to do the thing that's easy. Mark Rober kind of talked about it, and I guess it's like a mind response where it's like our brain naturally seeks out dopamine and like that dopamine hit, and will naturally try to avoid the things that don't give it that hit. But also, the more it gets that hit, the harder it gets to get more of that. So if we rethink our brain and kind of take control of it and go, I'm going to seek out doing the things that I know don't bring me comfort.
Yeah.
Do those first. Then our brain's naturally going to start to find joy in those things or try to find a way to go about it differently.
Didn't you say it was like a reward system in a way?
Yeah.
Or something like that? Like you're like disciplining your brain to be like, no, buck up. We're going to do the thing that's not fun. And then like later on is when it starts to
and
like,
your brain will be like, okay, I'm going to reward you with even more of a hit here. And that's all theoretical stuff, but it's an idea that I think is really cool and really like relevant to a situation where you're miserable or you're drowning or you're overwhelmed. And like, let's first define that, because what does drowning mean? And I think
that's subjective.
It is subjective, but I think overall the idea of drowning is like, if you're drowning or you're overwhelmed, it's overwhelmed. It literally is like, hey, I'm overwhelmed with what's happening. I'm overwhelmed with the situation in my life, where my life is at. I am not able to handle all this. And I think the first things you have to do in those situations is 1, acknowledge it, and 2, stop lying to yourself. And like the first one is like
1-2 punches in both these episodes.
Yeah, but I think it's the truth is like, okay, first thing you do is, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I have burnt the candle from both ends, because if you just keep denying it, you will keep running and keep trying and keep trudging water, thinking that you can get out of it.
Because you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. And that's why the second one is stop lying to yourself. And what I mean by that is the lie is not so much that, hey, I'm not overwhelmed. The lie is, if I just get to A, this will be easier. If I can just get to X, this will be easier. And like, this is the lie. And this is the truth. This moment right now, in all likelihood, is the easiest moment of your life. And here's what I mean by that. Everybody go back to elementary school. Was that harder in elementary school than it is in your 30s?
No.
You had no responsibilities. Everything was taken care of.
No responsibilities. You got playtime on the playground, and you had friends, and all you had to worry about was just being a kid.
Yeah, like our son.
Purple ketchup.
Oh gosh, purple ketchup. Our son is 3. And there have been multiple times where we'll be like, hey, we're not doing that. Like, he'll want to do something crazy. And we'll be like, no. And he'll just look down and walk to his room. And he'll go sit in his room. And he'll go, I'm sad. And it's like, what kid? Everything is taken care of for you.
Literally.
Everything that you can think of is taken care of and covered for you. He doesn't have that
perspective, though.
No, he doesn't. And you don't have that perspective because in that moment, that is the worst you've ever been. That is the worst. Like, life is as hard as it ever could be in that moment.
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be seasons and things like that. That does change. But overall, your life is as easy as it will ever be in that moment because as you get older, you get more responsibilities. You start having kids, get married. Mm-hmm. You have a spouse you got to take care of. More and more things start to pull your time, your money, and your energy. And they don't ever stop.
No.
Like, I'm 30 something and I would like to pretend that like, oh yeah, my life is easier now than it was 10 years ago, 4 years ago.
Fam.
No, like when I was in my 20s, I was grinding a lot. Yes, I was going to college and trying to run a business, and it was a lot. But I cannot look at that and go, yeah, no, that time was the hardest. It was harder then than it is now. No, it's harder now. I have a 3-year-old that when I'm done working out, I'm done doing all my work and done doing all this stuff, who comes home and goes, Daddy, chase me. Okay. Well,
Daddy, pick me up, throw me. Like, you know, let's go on a walk. Let's go play in the field.
You know? Let's go play statues. Let's go play pizza shop.
They never stop.
Like, I have a new thing taking my energy. Now I have a second one on the way. Like,
yeah.
So my life's not going to get easier. Not necessarily. My approach to it might get easier. Mm-hmm. How I handle it might get easier. But my life's not getting any easier. So the lie that we tell ourselves is we just convince ourselves, hey, if I can just get through this, I'll do this. If I just get through this project, if I just get through these edits, if I just get through this, then everything will get better. And what it does is it prolongs that situation because we'll go, okay, just got to grind it out. And you're not putting any steps in place to make sure you don't end up in the situation again.
Yeah. And there's always going to be another.
Always another.
Of that. Always.
Another.
There's always going to be another job. There's always going to be another edit. There's always going to be another something that you have to do that is similar to what it is that you're trying to be like, if I just get through this now, then blah, blah, blah. So it's like, just, I don't even know my words. Like, if you sit down and you figure out how to get through it now and continue to be able to sustain and work through it, like, because it's always going to be.
Yeah. Let's look at it in a practical situation, because I think theoretically from 30,000 feet, it's really easy to be like that. But let's go into a practical. Let's say, hey, I'm drowning in edits. I only have so much time in the day.
Yeah.
You know, and I also have a family. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get out of this drowning in edits? So your first thing is can I offload them? Can I pass this on? Can I outsource? Can I subcontract? Are these options? Financially, might not be an option. You might also take a hit. And you might just have to accept you're not going to make as much on the project as you originally planned to.
Yeah.
But that may be the practical step. If you don't have any time, then you need to actually figure out how to get that time back. You're not making more time. And like, you can go ahead and be like, I'm going to pull an all-nighter and get it done. No. You're going to pay for that on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
So something else has to pause.
So either way, you lose your time.
Exactly. Something else has to pause.
Yeah.
So like, if you're working 2 jobs, one of them's got to take a sick day. You got to use some time. Are you sacrificing PTO? Are you sacrificing this stuff? Yeah. Or if you're, just a freelancer who's swamped, that means you might have to turn down other income and you just have to deal with it. Like, you're going to have to make the hard decisions because you won't be able to get to a position where you can make good, smart, and growth decisions. You can't grow with a chain attached around you. Mm-mm. Like, you're never going to be able to do that. You cannot grow your business. You cannot grow your stuff. You cannot launch any new things. You cannot do any of those things if you have a 1,000-pound anchor, whether it be edits, whether it be business stuff, whether it be like these other things. If they're holding you back, you can't move forward. Mm-hmm. You can pretend and think you're moving forward, but the reality is you're just getting pulled backwards. So that's the first thing is like, hey, 1, acknowledge I'm overwhelmed. Okay. 2, I'm not going to lie to myself. Like, it's not going to get better tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm at the easiest point that it'll ever be. So I need to figure out what's causing this. How did I get to this situation? Okay. So like for us, for me, I know when we had our big editing backlog, what got me in the situation was my time management during the day. I was not committing that much. Like, I was working 8 hours a day, but it was 30 minutes on this. Okay, 30 minutes on this. Then I got to go do this. Then to this. And it's like, okay, but you're doing too much in a day.
Yeah.
you're doing too much in a day and you're not actually getting any progress on the thing that needs to get progress on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, it's the equivalent of like, okay, I need to chop down a forest. What's the better method? To go hack at one tree every few seconds, or to take one tree at a time, just take it all the way out? The reality is it's probably going to be take the tree out. Take one tree out. Okay, got it. I've at least started knocking the forest down. Mm-hmm. If I go through and hit every single tree with one axe swing, I'm going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Like, yes, eventually all the trees might fall, but by the time I've gotten to that point, there may be 4 more trees that sprouted up.
I was going to say, yeah, because then in that time that you're doing it, trees are growing also.
Exactly. So it's like, you'd be better off to take one tree down, keep moving. Keep one tree down, keep moving.
I mean,
one tree down, keep moving.
I always go back to our science teacher in high school, Miss Slade.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Miss Slade.
How do you eat an elephant? And we all looked at her like she was insane. And I was like, I don't eat elephants. She's like, how do you eat an elephant? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
One bite at a time. You don't eat the whole thing. You don't like try and do all these different, just one bite at a time.
So shout out to Miss Slade though, because she was a very underrated teacher in preparing us for college, because she was one of the first high school teachers I had next to Miss Curran, who was just straight up like, this is going to be hard.
Man, Miss Slade scared me. Miss Curran scared me.
She was like, hey, straight up, this is going to be hard. Here's why it's going to be hard. Here's how much I'm asking of you. Like, she was straight up like, this is before.
She was very straight up in the beginning.
This was basically a syllabus
top of the class.
in high school. And we were like sophomores. I don't remember what it was.
I had her in 9th grade, which was like, gosh, you step into a brand new like world of high school. And then you've got like this teacher that's like, boom.
Yeah. She was like, here's all the things I expect from you. This is hard. Okay. But here's how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that like prepped me for college. Because like when you get to college, your professor does not care if you pass or fail.
Nope.
Your professor doesn't care if you show up. It's all on you.
Yep.
And it's like, they're literally going to hand you that syllabus, hand you all that stuff, and go
and expect you to
have fun.
Yep.
Hope you can you can work hard at it.
Figure it out.
You got this. Good luck, dummies. And it's like, that's the kind of thing, like in general, like you have to have that self-discipline. But that's kind of a sidetrack, because shout out Miss Slade though.
Yeah, but that was always something like when you're trying to achieve, and I say that to you too. Yeah. Where like whenever you're like, oh, I've just got so much I have to do, and I'm like, one thing at a time.
Yeah. So here's the strategies that I would take for you if you're going into it and you're like, I'm drowning, I don't know how to get out of it. First thing, like I said, acknowledge you're overwhelmed. If you don't acknowledge it, and I mean verbally out loud say it so all of your brain can hear it. Like, hey, I'm going to say I'm overwhelmed, I'm burning out. Okay. 2, acknowledge that this is not going to be solved by just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard it and how many times I've said it, where it's like, I just got to get through the busy season. If I just get through the wedding season, it'll all be fine once the summer slows down a little. Once this slows down a little. But it doesn't. It never, ever slows down. Your life is never going to get easier. There's not going to magically be more hours in the day. Yeah. You're not going to suddenly have no other responsibilities unless something terrible happens. But like, you're always going to get harder. Like, your life just progressively gets more and more and more and more difficult. It'll peak out eventually. But until you retire, you're always going to get more responsibility, more work, more things. You may get more pay, but you're always going to have more of your time taken up by something.
Yeah.
You have less and less control over your time and your life the older you get. Mm-hmm. Okay. So once you acknowledge that, that's all the depressing stuff. That's all the like, okay, reality check, toughen up thing.
Yeah.
Now the practicality comes in that, okay, step 1, identify everything you have. What do I have to, there's a plane flying.
Sorry, there's a jet.
Yeah. So identify all the steps that you have. So like, hey, okay, I have 5 projects and I need to get them all done. Okay, let's break them down. Here's how we're going to eat the elephants. Mm-hmm. Let's break them down into their smallest forms. Like, okay, for like a wedding. Okay, my smallest form when I do like a wedding video is step 1, import the project. Boom, knock that out. That's super easy. Step 2, find the music. That is a very time-consuming part for me. It's finding the songs.
Yes.
And it's awful.
Yeah.
And sometimes I got to go to a coffee shop. Sometimes I got to go sit outside. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to sit there until I find the songs for that project.
I do think that helped a lot of you changing where you find the songs. Because you used to sit in the office and be like, I hate this. And then you like finally were like, you know what? I'm going to put my headphones on. I'm going to go on a walk. And I'm going to see if I can find something or I'm going to go. So it's like that helped too.
So like that's my step there. Okay. And like you just start breaking the project down into smaller steps. It sounds like it's not going to work. And it's so easy to go, that won't work for me. But you have to try it.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And that's the big thing is like, your brain is paralyzed right now with the I can't do this. And our brains like to see a task as a much smaller problem. If it is a massive thing, it will not be able to perceive that we can ever complete this. Mm-hmm. But if we break it down into smaller steps, our brains can go, oh, I can knock that out. I can knock that out. I can knock that out. Don't keep looking at the big picture. Look at the small ones. All right. Don't look at the forest. Look at the tree. I have to finish the tree in front of me. I'll get to the forest. I'll look at the tree in front of me. So we just keep going and going and going and going and work on it that way. So break the projects down into that step. And then the last big one is once you've broken it down into the small steps, you can kind of get a picture of how it's gonna go. You have to have that real conversation now. Okay, what can be done to make sure I can accomplish this? What do I have to do to get rid of one? What can I do to stop letting me get into this situation? And two, what can I either offload? What can I, push off? What can I move? What can I cancel? What can I get out of? What are those things? Or if I, hey, I need to go talk to my spouse and be like, look, I'm drowning. You are not going to get the best out of me until I'm out of this situation. Okay. So me and you need to have a conversation of like, how can I get out of the situation I'm in as a team? We've had to do that many times where it's like, hey, I'm behind on these edits, Tori. Yeah. You're going to have to take Caden and I'm going to have to lock myself in the office and get this done.
Yeah.
And, you've had those situations where like, hey, I have to finish these photos. They have to get out.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, me and Caden are going to take care of it today.
Yep.
And it's a difficult conversation, but you have to be able to communicate. And if you're by yourself and you don't have that, there's other things that are probably taking your time. Like, hey, family, hey, mom, dad, I can't hang out tonight. Or hey, friends, I can't hang out tonight.
And this is not don't ever hang out with anybody ever
Correct.
again. Don't ever do anything fun ever again. Don't ever don't do this. It is to get you out of the hole you are in.
Correct.
And it is temporary.
Correct.
And it will stay temporary if you take the steps to put the things in place
to make sure
that it's temporary.
Like if you're an editor, and that's what I think about a lot is like, how long does it realistically take you to finish something?
If you sit down and that's it. You focus on it, you do it.
Yeah, and don't guess. Actually set a timer and be like, okay, it takes me this long to finish something. Like I know there's a project that's reoccurring that I'm like, it takes me 3 hours to finish that. Mm-hmm. 4 hours if I really run into a wall, but 3 hours I will finish it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. If it takes you 3 or 4 hours to finish it, plan 5 hours of your day that are going to be locked on just doing that. And that's just the reality of it. Mm-hmm. Okay? So now I know that, okay, 5 hours of my day are doing that. I really don't get 8 hours of work in because I have to do emails and stuff. So that's 1 day of work right there on that project. I'm being realistic. Okay, cool. And that's how I'm going to plan out my attack method is okay, boom. I've got 5 hours of my day dedicated to this. That's what's taking my time. That's what I'm doing today. I'm not going to put 7 things on my to-do list for the day. I'm going to put 1 on it and I'm going to go accomplish it. And you know what? I might not feel great afterwards. I might feel like, I didn't really do anything, but I did something. Mm-hmm. I made some progress. And that's how you start addressing this when you're drowning is okay, work to get out of drowning, work to get out of the water. Mm-hmm. You should not be making comfort. You shouldn't be trying to grow gills. You should be figuring out how to get out of the water and figure out how to get out of the water. You need to also figure out how the heck did I get in here? How did I fall off the boat? How did I run into the sea? How did I end up in this situation?
Yeah.
And that's the big one you have to figure out is
being honest with yourself.
Very much so.
Is a big one. And not just well, I might have just, I may have just, and it's like with me with editing weddings and stuff. No, it's because I kept putting it off.
Yeah.
It's because I let things take my time. Yeah. Not take my time. I gave my time to other things.
And this isn't to say that the reason that you're in your situation is all your fault because part of the delay that we had last year was because I lost my mom. I wasn't editing during that time.
No.
That had nothing to do with anything anyone did. It just is a terrible life event that occurred.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about that situation. And that's where you have to come into the thing where you're for us, we were able to be all right, I can outsource some of this.
Yeah.
I can offload some of this. Mm-hmm. But you have to get ahead. You have to get to a position where you can, okay, I'm good. I'm not drowning anymore.
Well,
I'm treading water better.
It also helps in those situations where you have big life altering events and you have leaning into people, leaning into other people and just being honest, which I know is really difficult for for people.
Yeah.
But it's just, don't be afraid to be like, I'm not doing well. Like I need help. I'm struggling in these areas. I'm, and it's like, cause then you can lean into a support system, which then helps you, get to a better place.
Yeah.
But I mean, gosh, healing is not linear. So
that's good.
I mean, it's not like you have your days where you're like, or even your months where you're like, I'm friggin' yes. Awesome. I'm doing great. And then something happens out of the blue and you're like, I'm unwell.
Yeah.
So it's like, but also acknowledging there's a lot of being honest with yourself.
Yes.
That's
which is required, the hardest thing.
Which is very difficult. But it helps a lot to acknowledge things about yourself, about your mentality, about how you're approaching things, about how you're interpreting things. Like, so that plays into it really well, which is that's a good thing to practice.
And I think that's why it's so important to, like you said, like be honest with yourself. You have to first acknowledge that you're overwhelmed, and two, acknowledge that this is not going to magically get better. Because listen, this is the biggest fear here is if you lie to yourself and say, if I just finish X, Y will be easier.
Yeah.
You will just keep adding things to it because you're going to convince yourself that this is just a short-term situation. Oh yeah, I can take on that project. Absolutely. Because I'll be fine. I just need to finish these things and I'll get out of this and it'll be fine. But no, you can't keep taking on those projects. You can't keep adding to the situation because you haven't addressed that this is not a situation that's temporary. This is a reoccurring situation over and over and over again. And until you figured it out, you're going to keep adding weights to yourself while you're underwater and making it harder on yourself. So you have to acknowledge the fact that, like, no, life does not get easier. It will not get simpler. I will not suddenly add more hours to my day. This is what the situation is. It's only going to get harder from here. So how can I make this easier and more sustainable?
Sustainability.
The word of the year for us.
She keeps popping up.
It because that's going to be our theme over and over again. Again, like on our garage wall there, it says, what you start doesn't matter if you never finish. If you can't get to the finish line, it doesn't matter. Like because I've been running more 5K stuff lately, it's been great, awesome. Like if the goal is to run the 5K, then you need to finish the 5K, because you starting out on a sprint may be great, but if you collapse and don't get it to the finish line, then you didn't run the 5K. You just ran. Like if life is so much more of a marathon, it's so much more of like, okay, I might not be able to sprint or run through the whole marathon. I may have to walk some, but at least I finished the marathon. At least I can say I did it.
Yeah.
And like that is really why sustainability is so important.
And that's honestly, I mean, now that you said that, that ties into like when I ran my half.
Yeah.
I didn't run the whole dang thing. That's insane.
Yeah.
For me,
exactly.
Like I developed a system to finish, and I put it into like the things when I would practice with, my runs, my long runs, my short runs, my easy runs, my recovery runs, all of it. It all got tied into it, where when I came up to doing the half, I would run, and then the first minute of every mile I walked.
Yeah.
And then I would run, and then the first minute. And that gave me sustainability through the entire thing to be able to finish it.
Yeah.
Because if I ran that whole dang thing, like I can run a 5K nonstop, but a half marathon, let alone a full, geez Louise. Like, so I mean, that tied into that too, of making that like a sustainable, like I broke it down into bite-sized pieces, broke down the elephant.
Yep.
And I figured out, okay, this is the best way for me to be able to get through it.
Yeah.
And do well.
Yeah.
Not just get through it, but
Yeah.
But yeah.
What part of the elephant would you eat first?
I don't want to talk about that because I wouldn't eat an elephant.
Nah, agreed.
I just can't.
But obviously it's the tail.
No, that's so close to the butt.
Yeah, but it's easy. You have to eat the butt eventually.
No, that's so close to the butt. But then would an elephant butt actually be the shoulder and vice versa? Because that's what a pig is whenever they sell the meat.
And on that note, that's probably how we transition.
It's a logical thought process.
Guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of the 626 podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast. If you enjoy the 626 podcast, the best thing you can do for us is to share it with a friend and leave a 5-star review. It helps us a lot to get discovered.
And be sure to check us out on Instagram at 626podcast.